Sound good? Everybody's ready? We're all set. We're the speakers.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jody. I think you have the welcome.
I do. First of all, thanks to everyone who was able to participate with us this afternoon. We are trying a first of its kind for us, a short program this afternoon talking about the new varieties available coming out of Michigan State. There's been a lot of changes the last few years since Eric Olson has joined the team as the wheat breeder. We used to have new varieties ever so often, and now Eric has really grown this program to have several varieties each year. So we had the opportunity to partner with MSU and MSU Technologies to be able to really look at the pipeline and develop that pipeline and grow that pipeline so that we have avenues for all these varieties to get to the marketplace. So we appreciate the interest and hope you enjoy this afternoon as we walk through some of that. And I think now I will turn it over to Rich Chilla of MSU Technologies to talk to us from the MSU side.
Thanks very much, Jody, and thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon. My name is Rich Chilla. I head up MSU Technologies. That's the Tech Transfer and Licensing Office of the university. And so on behalf of Michigan State University and all of us, I want to thank everyone for joining for virtual field days. First of all, I want to thank Jody and the Michigan Wheat Program for their continued financial support, and not only financial support, but their engagement with us in the wheat breeding program. Their support, both financial and engagement, has really been critical to our research, to solve problems and develop varieties that are important for Michigan farmers. Later today, Eric and Dennis will be sharing detailed information about some of our research results, breeding results, and give you a little bit of a heads up as to the pipeline of things that are coming out of the breeding program. After that, Tom Herlash from my office will be joining us. Tom's responsible for licensing of ag varieties out of the university. And Tom's going to discuss the process and the timeline for folks on the call who want to license rights to new varieties that come out of the university's breeding programs. And he'll be able to answer questions on that as well. So with that, again, just thank everybody for joining. Next year, I hope to be able to meet a lot of you in person at our in-person field days. But Jody, thanks very much again. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rich. We appreciate it. And certainly one of the things we want to talk about, we mentioned the growth, the development of the breeding program at Michigan State. So I am going to turn it over to Eric and Dennis, because you are the two that work on that day to day, and have you really provide an overview of what's happened with that program, talk a little bit about the growth. And I think then people will see the need to make some changes as this program grows and develops into the future.
Well, thank you very much, Jody. We definitely appreciate the support from Michigan wheat farmers. And it's been my mission since I started in 2013 to deliver high yielding varieties, disease resistant varieties that are profitable for growers in Michigan and across the region as well. The Michigan State breeding program is one of over 20 to 25 public breeding programs in the country. And as everyone in the industry knows, the majority of varieties that are grown in the U.S. are developed by universities, just like Michigan State. And so some of our contemporaries are great programs like Virginia Tech in Illinois, the University of Illinois, Ohio State, and others. And we're very much an active program in that we are developing. We do have a number of varieties that perform very well each year that are of value to growers and also to the industry. And so I can give a little bit of an overview of the program just to bring everyone in on how we do what we do. And of course, it's always good to, can everyone still see my slides here? Okay, Great. I want to thank Dennis and Amanda Noble. That's her NC State pennant in the background there, by the way. Both her and I did our master's degrees at NC State in plant breeding. And Sam just left for Idaho. He's a great field tech. And Amelia's been helping us out full time. And Tommy, Selena, and Mel are going to graduate soon. We have some new graduates. We have great support from the milling industry in Michigan Wheat Program, and of course, the U.S. Wheat and Barley Scab Initiative. So of course, yield is our number one trait. Number two is scab resistance. So you'll see as we talk about particularly R898, we've really elevated the level of scab resistance. We lean on FHB1 a little bit, but it does the job for now. So that's a good part of our scab resistance program. So our program is designed to go fast. And you have a lot of programs that are quite large and they can, operate across, 10, 12 years for a variety development cycle. We're down to about 7 years from the time where we make a cross to where we have 3 years of replicated data across time and space. So 3 years of good high quality yield data is where we're looking at. So it starts in the greenhouse with our crossing program. So MSU has great facilities. We couldn't do it without our greenhouse facility. And so we have really tailored the program to our strength. We have great agronomists with Dennis and a great staff, so we can test a lot of material in the field. We can also generate a lot of populations in the greenhouse. And so we're looking at about 500 crosses per year. And double haploids are a bit expensive. We just can't get the numbers that we need for forward breeding. And so we've developed a process. I've coined it the mini bulk method, kind of a nice, cute little oxymoron there. But we're able to advance a lot of material in the greenhouse, and that goes directly in the field. So this is about an 18-month process from crossing to where we can derive inbred lines. Now, how we can go fast? We're doing the so-called speed breeding. We're essentially just using extended photo period to rapidly advance these lines in bulk in the greenhouse. Same thing we do in the field, but it only takes 16 weeks in the greenhouse instead of 1 year in the field. So we cut time off there, but we're also using genomic predictions. So we are using our advanced yield testing program, a replicated yield testing program, to develop prediction models that then inform selections, at this stage here. So these are F4 plants. These are essentially inbred lines. There's still a little bit of background segregation. I mean, you can see this in the field. Most lines are very uniform by this stage. Functionally, these are double haploid lines, inbred lines that we're deriving from the field. And then we grow those. We can go from a single plant. We put those in a small plot. And so we're able to go from one plant, about 400 seeds, we space plant. So we're observing about 250,000 individual plants per year, and then deriving about 3,000 from there. And we're going down to about 700 that we plant back. So with that 400 seed, we can get about 4 pounds of seed from that in a small plot. We can actually yield test in an augmented design. All this is geared to go fast. Then we do our first year of testing in Michigan. And then we fast track right into the commercial yield trial in Michigan, just because we operate that and we can fit the lines in. But then we also test regionally, and I visit. We have 3 different sites in Ohio this year, and we have 2 sites in Illinois, and so those really inform us which lines have a broader adaptation and could be of more value to the industry outside of Michigan. Our first target is within Michigan, of course, but we also do see broader adaptation in these lines that could be valuable in other states. So then by year 3. We're making strong cuts every year here, but we're looking at maybe 4 lines every year across these different states, depending on their regional performance. And of course, then we've got our foundation seed, but we're informing all of our selections with genomic predictions. We're doing some rapid, not double can't afford double haploids, but we can move a lot of material in our excellent greenhouse facilities. Oh, I'm happy to answer any questions as well. If folks want to type anything into the chat there to make it a bit more interactive. And so our inbred lines are they're pennies for every plant that we select out of the field versus double haploids. And we actually get some selection on those lines as well. And so the major diseases that we can apply really high levels of selection pressure for our scab, of course, head scab, FHB, fusarium head blight, leaf rust, and stripe rust. So we want to have at least 2 of these in every line that goes forward. And so we use we have an off-season greenhouse screening nursery. Essentially, we built some infrastructure to allow us to screen in a relatively high throughput fashion, screen for all 3 of these diseases. And then we're also able to select in these segregating populations. You can see there's leaf rust resistant segregating here, these clean leaves versus these infected leaves, and we just remove those. So by the time we select in populations in the field, we've already culled out the majority of those susceptible individuals. So that's how we're trying to hit that triple disease resistance goal. We can also do it with head scab, but it's a little more tricky. And the selection, one of my grad students was working on this, works very well for us. So that's kind of the overview of the program right now. We're geared up to move material through quickly in the program, which allows us to reintroduce those valuable allele combinations. So we're essentially built for speed. We kind of have a hot rod of a breeding program right now. It'll go fast, and then we have some steps in place to ensure that we're getting some of those disease resistance targets in addition to high yield. So I'm going to stop my share. That's a good, a nice overview there. Does anyone have any questions or comments before we move on?
I think next on the program was kind of the presentation of new varieties. So do you want to introduce them, Eric, or you want me to just play the video, or?
Well, why don't we go through the video, and then I do have a few slides to highlight some of the important traits, adaptation and specific traits in the 3 lines that are currently available for commercialization. We've got two soft red winter wheats and 1 soft white winter wheat.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll share my screen and play the video. Just make sure I'm sharing the right one. Are you seeing the video okay?
Yeah.
Right. I'm gonna go ahead and play it. If you don't hear it, holler at me.
Hey everyone, good to see you. I'm Eric Olson. I'm a wheat breeder and geneticist at Michigan State University, and the team and I develop soft red and soft white winter wheat varieties. And today I'd like to show you some of the material that we've developed that's available for commercialization. So I hope you like what you see. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the traits and some of the adaptation. The genetics that we develop are adapted well to Michigan, but also outside of Michigan for other states in the soft wheat region. We test in, of course, in Michigan, but also in Southern Illinois and Ohio as well. So we're able to identify areas of adaptation for some of these genetics. So the first line I'd like to talk about is 16R898. So this line was derived in 2016, and so we're working with a Jupiter top cross. So it's a red ruby by Kentucky scab line. That's the FHB1 donor in this cross, and it's top cross to Jupiter. So you can see very, very similar to Jupiter architecture. It's a little bit higher, a little bit taller height here. Even though it does express some height, it does have very good lodging resistance. So very stiff straw. So you think about this. You can think about this as it'll fit some dual purpose markets, right? So we're looking at a good stiff straw. Now, I also want to highlight the fact that this line has the FHB1 resistance gene. So we have all of the related scab resistance traits, lowered severity in the field, and significantly lowered DON levels, so conferred by the FHB1 gene. It's has a very upright plant architecture, so you do see extra light penetration into the canopy here. So we do it's taller, upright, scab resistant, and it's a little bit later. So if you're looking at your maturities, I would say that this is it's later maturity. So flowering date is about 2 days later than average, but that doesn't there's no detriment to yield there. Really deep green. It's kind of got a hallmark deep green color to it. It's a very attractive line. So that's R898. This line is available for commercialization. It's passed committee at the university. I want to highlight areas of adaptation. It's our highest yielding line in Southern Illinois. So it relative to, I mean, I can quote some names for you. Relative to, you know, we have our Pioneer 25R40 check, higher than R40, Sci 100, DF 112R. So when we're looking at R40 at 86 bushels, 898 has a 95 bushel mean, and that's across Illinois and Ohio testing in 2020. I mean, and there's a 2.7 bushel LSD on that. So we have significant yield advantage across the Illinois and Ohio, Illinois especially. So where we see R40 at Sci 100, 84 and 90 bushels, we see 898 at 100 bushels, and that's across 2 locations that's in Champaign and southern Illinois and Centralia. Also performs not as well in Ohio for two-year average of 87 bushels, and R40's at 87 bushels in Ohio as well. So we do have very good yield performance across the soft wheat region. So again, that's where an example where our lines do well in Michigan, but then there are specific areas of adaptation for these lines. So good yield potential, FHB1, and good stiff straw on 898. So I'd like to move down the road a bit to talk about another line. It's actually a SIB, so this is a Jupiter top cross, same pedigree. We don't have the FHB1 segregating in this population, but another line with very good broad adaptation, very stable yield performance here as well. And we have identified a unique adult plant leaf rust resistance. So we're seedling susceptible. So all of the USDA labs, it's been through it was tested in multiple USDA labs in 2020 in the Uniform Eastern Soft Red Winter Wheat Nursery. Susceptible at the seedling stage, but there is an adult plant resistance that we have seen at Mason here this year with some leaf rust pressure. There's stripe rust susceptibility. The scab resistance it's moderately susceptible. I wouldn't put it in the same level of susceptibility, some of the more susceptible material out there, but you know, it's important to emphasize the yield stability in this line, and we are testing this line in commercial trials in Illinois, Ohio, and Michigan, also Kentucky as well to see if we can target that region. It was number 8 out of 30 entries in the Uniform Eastern in 2020. So that's tested over 15 locations across the Eastern U.S. So. You know, there is the DON levels are close to average for what we see in our soft red winter wheat trials. So this line again is it's commercially available or available for licensing. Good yield stability. We'll have an additional year of data. So it's been tested 1 year in the Michigan State Performance Trial, and so we're getting additional data in these other states this year. So another comment, it's an RHT2, so most of our material, this is including 898, we're dealing with RHT2 material. We're talking about photo periods. It's a bit earlier than 898, so in contrast, 906 is about a day earlier than the trial mean. And what we're working with here is PPD D1 in sensitivity, so D genome in sensitivity. Same with 898. They're both photoperiod insensitive. An interesting quality trait. It does have the glutenin overexpressor. The gluten overexpressor allele. So you do see it does show up in slightly higher lactic acid SRC. So and the quality, of course, is quite good. Jumping back to 898, we do see a very large, larger than average, significantly larger than average cookie diameter, and also very relatively high lactic acid SRCs relative to what we see in the other commercial varieties. So our 906, good short stature, relatively short, no lodging issues under intensive management. So pretty good workhorse variety. Now, let's move on down the line here. So these two soft red winter wheats. They're commercially available now. They've passed through committee. Good broad adaptation. 898, it's got the FHB1 gene in there. 906 has got some adult plant leaf rust resistance. So let's head on down the field and talk about some white wheats that are available. I want to talk about W528, which is right next door here. This is a beautiful line. So some history with 528. It was advanced during, so the first year of yield testing was 2016, which we remember as a drought year. Did pretty well. 2017 the drought wasn't as severe. It did well. But its first year of it was derived in 2016. So that made it, we noticed its potential in that year. But 2018, this was the highest yielding line in our first year replicated yield trial. Performed extremely well. And then the performance dipped a little bit in 2019, and you can see a real contrast in those 2 years in terms of the weather variables present. Very, very lower yields, of course, in 2018, but there was a drought. Drought stress was a major issue during the 2018 production year. Not so much in 2019, and so you did see a rank change. In 2020, we had wasn't abundant moisture, we had adequate moisture, and so what I'm getting at is that under drought stress, 528 performs extremely well. So it's a very robust line. It's not as well adapted, I would say, to the heat stress that we've seen last year, and then we're very likely that we're going to experience during grain fill. Now we're about a week to 10 days past flowering for a lot of the material here, and we're looking at a warm forecast. So 528 has very good drought tolerance. Talking about some disease traits, FHB, it has very good type 1 resistance. Now, and so you see a very low FHB index for this line, and what's driving that is the type 1 resistance. So in a plot of 10 heads, you may only see 2 out of those 10 heads infected, but those heads might have 50% that are 50% of the spike might be infected, but you do see a lower frequency of spikes infected across the field. So we'd call that a type 1 resistance to FHB1. Very good quality parameters in terms of actual relative yield performance. 528 is the 3-year average is only 3 bushels behind whitetail at 100. It's a 97 bushels per acre behind whitetail, and that's across our Michigan testing environments, of course. And so our soft white wheat program is very much targeted to the white wheat producing region of Michigan. We do see some broader adaptation to other states. 528's tested well in Minnesota and South Dakota. Where it does fall short is with some of the unique disease pressures in those environments. So very good stable yield potential, good drought tolerance, and good type 1 resistance to FHB in W528.
Oh, okay, Eric, I think I'll stop sharing my screen here, and I think you have a couple things to share, don't you? You're on mute yet. You're still on mute, Eric.
Sorry, I wanted to thank Dennis for the great job putting that video together. I need to work on my Camtasia skills here, but that was pretty good. I'd like to transition and talk, just look at some data tables briefly. I was able to highlight some of the important traits for these lines, but I also want to show you explicitly some of the data that I was referring to. And these are full sibs, same cross, same pedigree, just different numbering, and they were tested they were derived in the same year, but then they were advanced in different years. I always hold back a few lines. So if we had 1,000 lines derived, I always hold back a couple hundred just in case. But you can see in Michigan in 2020, I want to mention 906 was number 3 among the soft red winter wheats it tested in Michigan. So it does have really high end yield potential in Michigan. It was only second to Cy Viper and R357, our release last year. So it was number 3. But very, very good yield relative to some of the, we use Sci 100 and DF 112 as checks. We do see a lot of variability in terms of, 2020 was the first year that I saw a rank shift for DF 112R. It's always been a really high end, high yielding check. And I think the heat stress got to it. It just couldn't take the heat in Michigan last year. So I think we're looking at some new selection pressures, at least in Michigan, but also across the region. And you can see our 898 is very stable, a good 3-year average here, higher than DF 112. I mean, of course, that's driven by 2020 there, but similar to other commercial soft red winter wheats. But the real highlight for 898 is Southern Illinois. Well, in Champaign and Centralia, we're looking at a 10 bushel advantage over Sci 100, and a huge advantage over R40. And 906 does well in that environment. So there's 2 locations. We're testing 906 in commercial yield trials in Illinois, as well as 898. So these are being tested in commercial yield trials in Illinois, Kentucky, and Ohio. 906 didn't perform well in Wisconsin last year. I'm not showing that data. It was just middle of the pack in terms of yield there in Wisconsin. It's a little different environment, a little different. There's some unique adaptations there. So 906 didn't perform as well across our 2 years in Ohio, like 2019 and 2020, but seems to have very good adaptation to Illinois environment. So we're looking at really good resistance to lodging, and these data came from Sanilac County last year, where we had pretty widespread lodging. Even this short and stocky R74 lodged quite a bit in Sanilac County. Well, even though 898 towers over these other varieties, it still had a very, very low lodging score. So we're looking at a really good straw producer in this line, good scab resistance. We keep that down out of the straws. I mean, that's really the direction I would go with this line. In 906 also, you can see it's a little bit earlier. It's similar versus 898. It's a little bit later here. Some other highlights, really low dawn in 898 here, and similar. 906 still has some relatively low relative to some of the other commercial lines here. Slightly lower dawn in that case. So 906 does have some septoria resistance, as well as there was an incredible disease pressure for powdery mildew, but data suggests we do have some powdery mildew resistance in 906 as well. And so I'll shift gears to talk about 528. I mentioned the 3-year average, which is just 3 bushels behind whitetail, and that's largely driven by the exceptional performance in 2018 in our drought year. And there was a slight shift where it's lower yielding, and these are in commercial yield. So 2018 was our advanced yield trial, replicated breeding trial, and then 2019 was the first year in commercial yield trial. So it was slightly behind some of the other lines. So 2019 was a very wet year, and so 528 doesn't like wet feet as much. And I put W190 up there as well, just as another, to kind of define the boundaries of our yield potential here. But 190 is also our scab resistance check. In 2020, it's done fairly well. So really the highlight of 528 is it's seems to have some drought tolerance. Also, the maturity is similar to Ambassador. It's not quite as tall as Ambassador, similar in height to whitetail. And Jupiter is a short line anyway, but just slightly shorter than the 9242 Dynagrow line. Test weight's good. We do have some sprout susceptibility, and we screen per average sprout every year. 9242 is really, and this. I shouldn't be selling other people's lines here, but that's, it's good for growers, right? We're here for growers ultimately in support. And whitetail has slightly better sprout tolerance than sprout resistance than the majority of the white wheats out there. But you can see our FHB index is is lower. It's not as low as W190. That's FHB1 and some other background resistance driving that. I mean, and so some of these these Don values are absurdly high because of the disease pressure that we place on these. But what we're seeing is a lower FHB index in 2020 and 2019. And that's because of a lower incidence in 2020, slightly lower incidence in 2019. But this is suggestive of, and the Don is lower relative to some of the more susceptible lines out there. So we do see a reduction in Don due in part to this type 1 resistance, lower incidence. So that, I believe, wraps up our session on the lines that are commercially available now. I guess I can pause to see if there are any questions or any comments or feedback from anyone.
I'm not seeing any questions in the Q&A or the chat, so I guess if nobody has anything else, should we roll with the next video then?
Sounds good. Sounds good.
All right. Let me share my screen.
So I'd like to talk about give you guys a sneak preview, some of the lines that are in their first year of commercial testing. So these have been tested for 2 years in Michigan. Now they're in their first year of commercial trials in Michigan. We've also tested them across Illinois and Ohio as well in some of our out-of-state trials here. So 1605, it's got good broad adaptation. It's done well. It's tested well from this cohort, 2018 cohort. It's tested well. It's got some moderate resistance to scab too, coming through from it's a Truman top cross. So we do see some moderate resistance to Fusarium coming through this cross. And it looks a little bit noisy right now. Where, of course, these plots have been through the combine for at least 2 years, so there's some noise in there. But genetically, we derive at about at the F6 stage and clean them up from there. 1605, good moderate resistance to scab. We're learning more about these genetics as we test them. I love the plant type for 875. Very long spike, very long peduncle on this genotype. So it's very unique relative to others, and so we'll see if this uniqueness translates into high yield. So both these lines, 1605 and 875, are being tested in the Uniform Eastern Soft Wheat Nursery this year. So we're learning a whole lot more about them this year. They're also being tested regionally in Illinois and Ohio again this year. So we're learning more about these lines, but just wanted to bring them to your attention. So let's shift gears a little bit. So those are 2 red wheats that we have available in the program now, and we're going to migrate over to a couple of soft. We have several soft white wheats that are being tested their first year in commercial yield trials. So 1044. Has a very unique plant type. It's a little bit more diminutive, very high tillering, kind of short stature, high tillering line. It's got that beautiful blue color coming through from the waxy background. We do need to do the testing on this to see if it's a full, partial, or a non-waxy type here. You know, as we know, there's potentially some segregation that would happen. So if we're dealing with a full waxy, we do have essentially we have a specialty, a white wheat that's specialty market ready for the waxy market. Does have resistance to Michigan, has seedling resistance and adult plant resistance to Michigan races of leaf rust, races that were collected here last year. So we're looking at some leaf rust resistance and interesting plant type, potential targeting as well. Now this guy's really cool, W286. 26 here. This is an ambassador by Dow Cross. Very short plant architecture. I really love this. It's kind of got the same green color as Jupiter, similar to Jupiter there. Really short, stocky, really full spike. Similar to, it reminds me of Shirley, if you're familiar with Shirley, a very Shirley-esque plant type there. So that's really what we're targeting is short and early, or short plant architecture. So this can be adopted to intensive management strategies here in Michigan. So we're learning more about it. So again, this is just a sneak preview here. Don't have we go based on, lines are advanced based on yield potential, yield stability. Really, we hit our quality cutoffs, and it's nice to have some additional traits along with that, like the leaf rust resistance. Now, W200, this is a very interesting line here, and what we see, you can see the ambassador blue coming through, but this U number is a germplasm that I developed during my PhD at Kansas State University. It brings along, so it's got some Aegilops tauschii, some D genome in there. This is a single, so this pedigree, 1/24 of the genome is actually Aegilops tauschii from the mountains in Turkmenistan. But we see a lot of, so there's some unique genetic diversity here. But what's really interesting about lines derived from this pedigree, we're looking at 1,000 kernel weights that are around 60 up to 70. I mean, they're just massive 1,000 kernel weights coming through these lines. So as a yield component, that's very attractive. I mean, you can see though there are some vulnerabilities here. You can see the leaf rust coming in on these, and there's some powdery mildew. I mean, so it's would be geared towards more intensive management. There was leaf rust resistance coming through. We didn't get it here, but it's a beautiful plant type, and it's unique. There's some very ancient wheat genetic diversity coming through in this line. So, and very upright plant architecture in the cross trial. So you do get more light penetration into the canopy. And you think about unique adaptation to you can think about narrower row spacing with some of these varieties as well. It's a pretty line, so we'll see how it performs this year. Again, just a sneak peek. So we got ambassador by F14, so MSU line by MSU line. You can see it's a characteristic soft white wheat, and so again, just yield stability, good quality. Everything that we're working with here has really good. Test weights are all stable. I mean, that's we've dropped some lines that perform very well just because their test weights were low across the board. But and these lines are generally very early maturity, a little bit taller relative to the lines in the same cohort here, but you can definitely. You can see it. We'll see what the yield stability is like this year. So another sneak peek. So let's head on down the field and talk about some white wheats that are available. So this beautiful blue line is this is a double haploid line that we developed. So when I started at MSU, we generated with the help of the Michigan Wheat Program, we generated about 1,500 DH lines, and so this is a backcross. Backcross 2, you can tell it looks like ambassador. It's an ambassador backcross, so it's a BC1 to ambassador here, and this is a Simmet germplasm. This was a scab resistance, a line. The cross was initially made for scab resistance. We did not recover that. It does have some vulnerabilities for scab, but the strengths are just really good yield stability and good performance. It yields higher than Jupiter and slightly lower than Whitetail in terms of yield performance. So this is a line that would definitely respond well to intensive management, given the scab vulnerability. So we'll see how it does this year. Performance has been consistent for this line. Now I'd like to shift down here to another white wheat. This is W235. So this is from that, so a very good pedigree. We got Jupiter by 25W43. So a lot of growers will remember the W43 Pioneer package here. So it does look like Jupiter, pretty similar height. It's got the color, the W43 color to it, the Jupiter spike architecture here. Another line it's would follow a similar trend to 528. Very good stable yield potential over time, and so there's the good quality, and the scab resistance is pretty intermediate for, I would say, for 235. It's not the best for scab resistance, but it's I would say it's middle of the road. So very early maturity relative to the mean trial mean. It's would be similar. It's a day earlier than Ambassador for a good reference point, and 4 days earlier than Jupiter, which is Jupiter's our late maturity check. And so the Don levels are lower than they're approximately half of the Ambassador level of Don. So there is an advantage. They're I would say similar to the Jupiter level of scab resistance, which is Jupiter's still susceptible.
All right, so that's the end of the videos. Eric, do you have anything else you want to share?
Well, some of those are we have less data on some of those, so there is very much just a preview to let folks know what we've got in the pipeline, and give a hint to what might be available for commercialization this fall or next year. So and of course, we have some data tables available on those lines. We're happy to share some of those just so that you can dig into the details and make those comparisons with our commercial check varieties. Yeah, that's I think that wraps up the presentation session there.
All right, Jody, what's next? Where do you want to go to?
Next, we have Tom Herlash from MSU Technologies. I can see that Tom is here. And what we've tried to do this afternoon is kind of show you what's on the horizon, what's available today, what's going to be available tomorrow. And then we're hoping your next question is going to be, Tom, what do I do and how do I license some of these varieties? So I think it makes sense to turn it over to Tom and have him explain to us what's the process, what does somebody do if they're interested?
Mm-hmm. Hi, so Tom Herlash, MSU Technologies. I handle primarily the agriculture portfolio at Michigan State University, and I do all of the variety licensing. We do have a new ag fellow, Julia Mueller. I can't see if Julia is on today, but she's learning the ropes and helping me out a lot with this process. Which reminds me, before I dive into how we do licensing, we are in the process of doing a survey of wheat seed companies to see how you would like to interact with the breeding program and the approach you would like to take to licensing varieties. So many of you, I hope, will receive emails or phone calls from us in the near future. Please do answer that, because we want to structure our system to match the market rather than what you're about to see, which is how we're doing it so far, which was kind of the system we built without any feedback. So the system we have now, it does work, but again, we would like to really make it fit more with how industry would like to work with us. So how are we doing this now? Let me shift to my screen. So you should be able to see my screen right now, right? Can you see I just whipped together some notes. Can you see that? Yes?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. If you can make it a little bigger would be great. Make it full screen.
Okay. Let's see. Come on. Boink. There we go. Is that better? I'll do this too.
Yep, it's getting there. There we go. Yeah,
There
that's
we go.
awesome. Thank you.
So there are two basic tracks we can take to licensing a variety. If you're a company that would like to get some seed and run your own trials before committing to a license and the obligations you would have under a license, we can take this first track, which is an option agreement. That will give you a period of time, usually somewhere around 2 to 3 years, to run your own multi-site trials and then enter into a license if you like the variety. Under the current system where Eric is testing varieties and then releasing him when the varieties when he sees that they're finished, what we're usually doing though is entering into a license. In that case, we usually prefer a non-exclusive license, which means other companies can be selling the same variety. That helps us get the variety out to a lot of different people where it can really enter and serve the market. We will do exclusivity if that is your strong preference and you have good justifications for being the sole vendor of an MSU variety. We can do that. Generally, those exclusive licenses will come with a higher royalty rate. And as I alluded to, we'll have expectations for market penetration. Here's how you're going to enter into various states within that market. You'll be sub-licensing or subcontracting seed production, and we'll want to see that on a schedule. That's, again, listed down below a little bit in a little more detail. So if we do enter into a license, these are some of the key terms that we have in our variety license agreements. First, in what territory will you be marketing the seed? Is it Michigan only, Michigan, Indiana, Ohio? You're going all the way out to Minnesota and down into the boot heel of Missouri. Where will you be selling the seed? If you're not serving the whole market that we think the variety is adapted to, we'll want to make your license territory specific so we can get other companies in to push the varieties into the other parts of the territory. We'll want to know whether you want to have an exclusive or non-exclusive license. We'll need to work out the royalty rate, which will vary depending on whether you're exclusive or not. So if you have an exclusive license, we would, again, usually expect a higher royalty rate. If you're non-exclusive or you're facing more competitors in the market for the same variety, we'll do a lower royalty rate. We also need to know how you get the variety out into the entire market. If you serve the entire market yourself, then we don't need to do sub-licensing. I know many companies, however, will take a license and then sub-license the variety to a local seed producer who's serving that local market. So we can do sub-licensing. We always provide for subcontracting. So if you're having someone condition and store the seed, or somebody who is only marketing seed on behalf of your company in a jurisdiction, we can do that. If you subcontract out, say, foundation seed somewhere and then bring the certified seed in, or foundation seed in, and contract certified seed production to somebody else, we can do that. We will grant those subcontracting rights. We just need to know how you've structured your business, basically. We always require some form of quality control. We want to be in the market. We want MSU's varieties to have a reputation for being of the highest quality seed that's out there. We do prefer to use the certification system, either the 3 certification system we have here in Michigan, breeder, foundation, and certified, or a 4-class certification, depending on where you are. We also will do quality assurance. That's the next most preferred. And then I've actually done a couple of licenses where the quality assurance is done through the company providing its own warranty of purity and germination rate and things like that. In that case, we do want to know what you do in order to warrant quality to your customers. We want to see that. Again, we want our varieties to be of the highest quality in the market. Then when it comes to marketing and naming the variety, we prefer a single name throughout the whole territory. I know I've heard from several seed companies that, yeah, they would rather give their sub-licensees some sort of naming rights or to have the variety sold as variety not stated. This is one of the reasons we're doing that survey. We really want to find out how you are marketing seed. But again, we do prefer a single name throughout the entire market, such as Eric's line name, or we can give it a fanciful name like Ambassador or Jupiter, and then it would be marketed that way throughout the whole licensed territory. That's our preference. But as I said, we can do agreements where we have variety not stated. But again, in that case, we want to have consistent and verifiable quality assurance and some mechanism where MSU can identify all sales of the seed. So maybe there's an internal tracking number that's used on all sales, even though it's sold as variety not stated all over. There's some sort of internal tracking number that goes along with each bag or tote of seed. Just some way that we can verify how much of that variety has been moved every year. We usually seek intellectual property protection on our varieties like a PVP. Now, if you PVP a line, then it does have to, by law, be marketed under this single name, such as the MSU line name. We don't have to use the state certification system if we PVP it, so it can be quality assured or warranted. So if we PVP protect it, we do have some flexibility around that quality assurance mechanism. We can structure a license where there's no PVP protecting that variety. In that case, we want to know how you maintain proprietary control over the variety so that people don't just take some certified seed, blow it up and start marketing it, right? So what kind of contractual provisions do you have with your subcontractors or sub-licensees? And what kind of contractual provisions do you have with the commodity growers? Do you provide a bag tag license that prevents them from doing that? So we maybe have a contractual remedy if somebody's out there increasing seed and marketing it, not paying us a royalty. We need to maintain some sort of control over the variety so it doesn't just get out the barn and run away from us, right? And then we also need to know, how long do you want to have the license? This relates back a little to exclusivity. So we might do a short-term period of exclusivity, like 3 or 5 years. So your company becomes known as the vendor for the variety, and then other people can come in after that. You would also, in that case, have the advantage of having gone through that seed increase. So you have some biological protection of your market because you have the volume of seed and nobody else does. But we could then let other companies in after 3 to 5 years. We don't normally do that with our wheat varieties. Usually we license for a term that's the life of the plant variety protection certificate, which is 20 years. If we don't do a PVP, we would usually make that license for a 20-year term also. So those are the key terms we need to see in our license agreements. As I think you kind of get the gist, we work these out on a custom basis with each one of our licensees. We do have a template license agreement developed that has a lot of standard language in it. So it's not too much work to tune it out to your needs. We have a lot of pre-drafted text to rely on, and it's mostly a matter of plugging in these particular terms into our template license agreement. So that's the gist of licensing. I see I forgot to put my contact information on my quick notes here. I'll type that now. So I'm at msu.edu. And my phone number is 884-1656. So that's how you can get a hold of me if you need to. I guess that's my quick presentation on licensing. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me now.
Tom, one of the questions that I had, what about timeline? We try to, once we have harvest done each year, we try to analyze the results, and Eric tries to pick out what he thinks might be the lines that might be candidate for release. And we have that process where we go through and get approval to release through the college and whatnot. From there, once it's available, now we do have 3 that are available right now that have already made it through that process. Once they get through that process, what's the timeline for working with you? Because if a company wants it, they're probably going to want that seed to start doing increase immediately that fall.
Right. Yep.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so we're going to try, well, we should be launching our licensing process sometime around February for lines that get released. So the internal release process there's a 2-stage review that we go through, right? There's a department level and then an ag experiment station level, and that experiment station level review is usually end of January, beginning of February. So that's when the fully finished lines are released. So if you're on our list of potential licensees, we'll be blasting out the information. We have a line available for licensing sometime around mid-February to early March. So hopefully we can get those licenses done, end of May or June. So you have your license ready when the harvest comes in, and we can get that seed handed off to you so you can get started on your own seed increase. Dennis, as you mentioned, we have a couple of lines that are available now. And if those are of interest to people, we can get started on that. We should get started on that licensing process ASAP. So those agreements are done by September when stuff's ready to go, when it's got to get in the ground.
Yeah, because we are doing some seed increase of our own, just for, in case somebody wants to license this line, we do have at least more than just a small handful of seed that's available that we can hand off. But yeah, before we can hand off the seed, we do have to have this agreement in place.
And currently we have about 200 pounds of breeder seed that we maintain. And, we've worked really hard on the front end of the breeding program to shorten that timeline for variety development, but there's still that seed expansion stage where, where we try to build up all of that clean breeder seed. So we're at about 200 pounds now. We're working on ways to make that a little bit more efficient. And I think I wanted to touch on this is great, Tom, and thank you for providing all this information. And I really appreciate the how we can tailor the approaches to individual companies. From the breeding programs perspective, we can find ways to get material into your hands sooner than later if you're interested in testing the materials in-house. For example, after a first year of commercial testing in Michigan, we can go into those option agreements right away, and we would have a small amount of seed lot then. That would be the 200 pounds. That first year of yield testing, we would have 200 pounds of seed available, and that's a substantial amount for either custom purification deriving from within that seed lot, and also for large scale replicated testing, possibly some on-farm testing as well, depending on how your organization operates. Very good.
Thank you. I think that shared a lot of information, and as I look at it, and I guess I think, next steps, if I'm a company, I've been listening, there's a couple I'm interested in, I know what to do with Tom, but you know what, Eric and Dennis, what do I do if I'd like to come walk the fields and kick the tires and check them out a little bit? What are my options with you guys?
Well, we did our best with the videos to do these lines justice, but it's very tactile. You've got to get out there and interact with those plots and see them relative to their peer group, to the competition. And so we welcome anyone to visit our Mason Research Farm. We've got plots staked out, and we have 7 locations across the state of Michigan as well, where these lines are being tested. And Dennis, did you want to comment on some of that, how folks could interact with those sites?
Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll put our contact information in the chat box here for us. And then so if you want to get a hold of us, I'll put mine and Eric's email in there, and I'm happy to put my phone number, my cell phone number, if you want to call as well. And it's a matter of making a phone call and getting a time when we can meet out in the field. We did have some COVID rules, but those are relaxing a bit, and we can have visitors on our sites now. And so that's kind of exciting. So we'd love to have somebody come and walk the field with us and look at what we have and what we're doing. So, yeah.
We do have some of these lines near Adrian, Michigan, town of Britain. There is our Lenawee County trial site. We do have several TSI sites in Ohio that are accessible, and anyone who's got a broader reach, we have some, well, with some of our collaborators in Champaign and Centralia, Illinois as well. But there are some of the TSI sites. We have our some of that's very preliminary, but you can get a look at our 1605 and our 875 that we talked about today at some of those other sites outside of Michigan. And we have some various sites across Michigan as well. So I'd very much like to meet with you and walk plots there, or just to get you the field book and you can have at it. So that's where I'm headed tomorrow. So yeah.
Jody, one last thing. I think Doug I see Doug Mueller has joined us. He might have a couple comments he'd like to make. Can we give him the opportunity?
Absolutely.
Well, thanks, Dennis and Jody. I don't have a lot to add. Sorry, I wasn't here at the beginning, but I was here for most of it, and it really was good to watch this. And I really, I think we're really excited about expanding the partnership this way with the Michigan Wheat Program, and recognizing that the capacity and the amount of new material that Eric and Dennis and their crews are putting together are more than probably we can absorb in a traditional way in Michigan. And so the idea of this expanded testing is something we've been talking about for a number of years now. And it's really great to see that we've come together for this type of an agreement and to see this move forward. So we're really looking forward to this, and thanks to all the people that are involved. Tom and Rich were a big part of this as well. And so it was a real team effort. So it's good to see it moving forward. And I think there's a lot of potential here for some good things. So thanks for the opportunity to listen in and to make a comment or two. And I agree with Dennis. It is really great to see things starting to open up again and being able to welcome people back. And it's pretty good timing, not for wheat field days, but for our other field days. We're going to be able to do some things and start meeting with folks. I actually went to an event this morning, the first one in a while, and people were almost giddy. They were so excited to be together for a kind of a traditional program. So hopefully most of this is behind us and we can move forward. But I do just quickly said I wasn't going to say too much, not keep talking, but I do also want to just recognize people like Eric and Dennis and all people in our system that have figured out ways to keep their research going through what has been a couple of years of something like none of us ever dreamt would happen. And so I think we've kept the important work going and we didn't lose much. And so everybody who pulled together and figured out how to make this happen deserves a lot of credit. So thanks for that. Thanks, Jody.
Thank you. Thank you, Doug. We really appreciate it. And I think Doug said it so well. This really has been a team effort, and this has really been going on for years as the program grew, taking a look at it, trying to figure out what makes sense. And so I also want to make sure I share with you really how to stay up to date and how to know where there's more information. So I am going to quickly share my screen. Hopefully most of you have seen this. This is the Michigan Wheat Program website. So if you come to our website, miwheat.org, up on the top right here is a tab for variety releases. This is brand new, right off the press. It'll give you a little history about our work and how we're all involved. And then as you scroll down right here, pretty straightforward. Here is the taped program. The program that we did today was taped. Dennis is going to get that converted and do a couple edits on that and tighten that up a little bit. And right here will be the link. So if you wonder, well, what exactly was it that Eric said? What was that one that was better? You can load that right up through our YouTube. You can take a look at it. You can watch that. And if you're like me, you're still more visual and you want those numbers, we are very lucky, as Tom mentioned, to have Julia Mueller now in MSU Technologies. She is working with Eric, and we are going to have handouts on each of these different varieties that Eric spoke about that are in the video. So as you scroll down, you can see the ones that are available now and the ones that they're still doing more testing, but will be available in the future for licensing. We will have handouts on each one of these that all you'll have to do is click and you can take a look at it. You can look at the charts. You can look at the values. You can study that information. Take as long as you want. That can go much slower than just as we walk through everything in the videos. So we'll also get contact information on here, but I just wanted to make sure that you knew this resource is out there and it's available. Again, at miwheat.org and right up here on the top, variety releases, and you can get all of the latest information. So as our relationships develop and as we continue to evolve and have more and more information, this will be a great place to get started to go ahead and see what else you can learn and find out what else is available. I also want to make sure that you have my contact information. I am through the website, but also that is available, and I'm going to put that up right now. So if you have questions on the wheat side, you can definitely get a hold of me, and we can get you more information on what we're up to or let you know about future events like this that will be coming up. So this is our first time through doing an event like this. And given the weather and how quickly things were progressing, we've pulled this together pretty quickly. So lots of thanks to Eric and Dennis and Tom, who really punted and got this all pulled together. And we hope to be able to bring you these on an annual basis. So with that, if you have any questions, please follow up with us. And from all of us, we appreciate you being with us at our first event. We will continue these in the future. Watch for the survey that Tom mentioned, because we want to make sure we're giving you what you as the industry need and that we have products available out to our farmers. So with that, everyone, have a great afternoon. Hopefully it's not quite as balmy there as it is here this afternoon. And we hope to see you out in the field with Eric and Dennis checking out these varieties. Thank you.
See you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.